welcome to the show. I appreciate you tuning in for another brand new review. Don't forget, every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, I'm having a new interview, a new opinion piece, or some horror news for you to come and check out. And help me out just a little bit here, y'all. I am still trying to get the perfect mix for my sound levels here on the show. So if for any reason the mic vocals are just still a little bit too loud, let me know in that comment section so I can help actually get that right where it needs to be. Appreciate you all looking out for me now. So what are we talking about here tonight? If the shirt and the key aren't a dead giveaway, folks, we are celebrating the 30th anniversary of my favorite film of all time, Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight. Coming up here on January 13th, it'll be 30 years since the theatrical release of this fantastic film. Now, earlier this week, I talked a little bit about growing up with that movie and the impact that it had on my life. And on the anniversary itself, I'll be dropping my review of the actual film. But I got some other great stuff in store for you here this weekend, including a look at the 2 episodes of Tales from the Crypt that the stars of Demon Knight, Bill Sadler and Billy Zane, appeared back in the first episode of the show, and then another one later on that we're going to talk about a bit too. So you don't want to miss that. But tonight, I thought we would go a different route here. Some of you might not be aware that Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight actually got a novelization. Now, I would love to be holding that in front of you here right now because I do actually own a copy of that, but I've seemingly have misplaced it, and it would take me a little bit of time to actually track that down. So I figured, you know what? You're just going to take my word for it. Y'all can actually find this novelization online, selling in various ranges, anywhere from like $30 on up to $75. And what I'm actually going to do here at the end of the show, you can actually read this book online in the Internet Archive for free. So I'm going to put that link here at the end of the show for you for anybody that's interested in actually going through and reading it, because it's actually a fun read, especially if you're a big fan of the film. But I thought, you know what? Let's talk a little bit about that novelization here tonight on the show, because some of you probably, again, didn't realize that was even a thing, and more of you probably want to know what differences, if any, are there between the book and this movie. So tonight, folks, strap in. We are talking Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight, the movie novelization. Now, this book was written by author Randall Boyle, and I've talked about it before, especially in my interview with Tim Wagner that I did last month, about how I was always under the impression when it came to these novelizations that the writers are getting like an early draft of the script, and that's what they're writing their books to. Because growing up, I don't know if a lot of you did this, but I was reading novelizations of films all the time. Godzilla, Alien Resurrection, like I had a bunch that I was absolutely in love with. But if you go back and read them, it's interesting to see that the book ends up being somewhat different than the movie. Now, we're not just talking about like characterization, because when you get to write a novel, a lot of times you can spend more time expanding on the lore of the characters that we're seeing in these films, give us a lot more details that we might not have been exposed to or at the time to focus on in the movies. And that's what I was used to for sure. But in a lot of these novelizations, big events would end up being changed. There'd be a lot more added to it, to where it always seemed like you were looking at a director's cut with a bunch of deleted scenes that were still in the book itself. And Demon Knight definitely would fit that category for sure, as all the familiar trademarks that we know about this group ending up at this mission that's been turned into a boarding house or a hotel. The collector shows up looking to get the last of the keys so that the forces of darkness can take over. The Blood Seals, Breaker, Geraldine, all this stuff is still in there, but a lot of it is played very differently than what we see on the film. For example, the intro that we see with John Larroquette and the busty blonde that turns out to be a movie that the Crypt Keeper is directing before he takes us over into introducing the film Demon Knight, which is his next big film that he's currently cutting up right now. Again, they're presented as films in Demon Knight, but in the book, they're just presented as normal stories. Just as usual with the Crypt Keeper telling us his weekly story from his tomb, this is the same thing. He's going from one story into another one. So the meta feel here for sure of the Crypt Keeper actually being a filmmaker in the movie, I think they both work, honestly, where we are living in a time we were just getting films like Wes Craven's New Nightmare and Scream and Urban Legend and all these films that put us into the meta world that horror was going to go into for the next like 15 to 20 years. Some of the descriptions of the characters in this book are quite different from what we get in the film as well too. The biggest difference being Deputy Bob, played by Gary Farmer in the actual film. You know, Deputy Bob is presented as this balding, overweight, out of shape cop who's basically never really had to probably deal with like some serious cases or serious action in his life. Whereas in the book, to be quite honest, Deputy Bob is described kind of like Breaker. He's a younger military looking man who's impatient with the leadership of Sheriff Martell and thinks he has a little bit more to offer and cannot stand working for this man. But he's described quite differently from how we see Bob depicted in the actual film itself. The collector, known as the salesman inside the novelization, has hair. They talk very much about his hair in that intro to him in the book. It's kind of funny considering in other roles we see Billy Zane in the 90s, such as Titanic or a personal favorite of mine, The Phantom. You know, he is rocking that slick back hair wig because the man is bald. But outside of that, presented very similar to the way that he appears in the film. Or one of the bigger ones, that Geraldine is white in the book compared to, you know, being played by Jada Pinkett Smith in the film. And, you know, a detail like that is kind of important, I feel, to the movie itself, and especially the legacy of it, because, you know, most of our horror heroines in history, they're white, you know, there's no getting around that. But the fact that, considering this story is focusing on this downtrodden town that's on the verge of dying, all these characters who have no future among them either, and seeing this young black woman kind of escape all this from this background that she has and is now on the run, there's a lot of strong messaging in that, which is what we got onto the movie itself. So it's not a bad thing that Geraldine is white in the book in the least bit, but the messaging of that in the movie cannot be overstated or missed there. Of course, other characters, again, are getting expanded backstories way more than what we get in the film. Specifically, Danny and his parents, along with Roach and Cordelia. We get a lot more insight into the kind of people that they are in the book than we do in the short time we have in the film. Roach ends up being even more of a creep in the novel than he is on film. And Cordelia, you actually feel a little bit more sympathy for. Not that we didn't already feel sympathetic for her in the film, but we get this background of her being this teacher at one point, and that because of, again, the dying economy of the town that they all live in, that she didn't really have much of a choice except to turn to sex work in order to get by. Other interesting points in there. We get more of a sense of Breaker's weariness as we get a little bit of the backstory of some of the encounters he's had with the salesman, the collector before, and how he's constantly been on the run and is just endlessly tired. And we do get a sense of that with Bill Sadler's awesome portrayal of Breaker in the film, but of course we don't get that much time to really explore it. And really, when we're looking into Breaker's backstory in the film, it's him getting the key and then ultimately ending up at the mission. We don't really get much of what happens in between, and the book very much fills in some of those gaps to tell us how long he's been on the run and the encounters he's had with the salesman before. I always thought that'd be a great TV show, honestly. Other things, as the book does mostly play out the same way, but a big change here was the deaths of Irene and Deputy Bob, to where in the film they go out in a blaze of glory, protecting Danny, Geraldine, and Breaker by blowing up a grenade when the demons are approaching and about to break through, and they end up taking out quite a large number of them in a very heroic way. Whereas in the book, both of them basically hightail it out of the hotel and actually get out. And considering that in the film, it's pretty much presented that they're on lockdown, there is no way at all they're getting away from the hotel at all. It's kind of cool to see that some of the characters are able to get out. The biggest thing overall, though, that gives it more of a personal feel that I felt is the fact that ultimately it is the salesman, the collector, who is responsible for Breaker's death here in the novel, compared to in the film, where it ultimately ends up being Danny's demonic form that takes Breaker out once and for all. And in the film, it kind of makes sense because it shows that these key holders are discarded very easily, that their job simply is one thing and they are going to die for this job that they have, but ultimately they serve no other purpose. So the way that Breaker is just kind of dispatched rather easily, it shows the point of these people mean nothing at all except to protect these keys. But not only that, it just shows how dangerous these demons ultimately are, because you don't need the collector to come down here and ultimately kill a demon knight. There's no reason for him to actually do that. If the demons have the ability of doing that, then it shows you that the Demon Knight is somehow able to get by anything bad happening. It very clearly shows that all it takes is just one in order to end a Demon Knight's life. So there are some differences in here, but for the most part, you're getting the same story that we all know and love. I very, very much recommend reading this book, getting a chance to check this one out, just because if you're a Demon Knight fanatic like me, you want the full story, and this fills in some great backstory on a lot of these characters that I've grown up with and absolutely love. Now again, I'm going to put this link up here for y'all to go and check this out. If you do read it, I want you to come back to the comment section and tell me your opinion of that, folks. But that's going to do it for me here tonight. Make sure to get subscribed to my Linktree, just because that's going to be the best way to stay on top of all the content I'm dropping, including more Demon Knight coverage this weekend. You can access that at linktr.ee/tscarymovie. If you get access to my Linktree, that's going to give you access to my YouTube page for the video versions of the show, your favorite podcasting platforms for the audio-only versions of the show, my Letterboxd page for written reviews and movie rankings through the year, to the TikTok page for short horror content, to my Twitch page for all my horror gaming, including The Thing Remastered and Phasmophobia, and my Fangoria shop page, where you can enjoy a 20% discount off anything in the Fangoria shop. Take advantage of that, folks. Hit that subscribe button, because I got more great Demon Knight content and some other great reviews coming your way. But for now, that's going to do it. My name is T. We've been talking scary movies. Stay scared.